You probably didn't expect a musical instrument to make this list, neither do most people, but doctors have actually documented a condition nicknamed bagpipe lung. Sounds fake. It's not. Here's why. Every breath you blow into a bagpipe is warm and full of moisture. Some of that moisture stays inside the bag. Play often enough, and that dark, damp space becomes a perfect place for mold and fungi to grow. Basically, your instrument can become its own tiny ecosystem. Now here's the problem. Every time you play again, you're pushing air right back through that same space. If mold has built up inside, some of those microscopic spores can end up in your lungs. Your immune system notices, and it doesn't stay calm. Instead, it treats those spores like invaders. Do that over and over for years, and the constant inflammation can begin damaging healthy lung tissue. The condition is rare, but it's real enough that doctors have published medical reports about it. The good news? The instrument isn't the enemy. Poor cleaning habits are. Many experienced musicians say regular drying and cleaning are just part of owning a bagpipe, because nobody wants to discover their favorite instrument has been secretly growing roommates. A lot of people got into resin crafting or 3D printing during the pandemic. At first, it looks harmless. You pour some liquid or press print. A few hours later, you've made something awesome. A dragon, a miniature, a custom phone stand. What's the problem? The problem is the part you can't see. Liquid resin isn't just sticky, it's full of chemicals that haven't finished reacting yet. While it's curing, it can release tiny amounts of chemical vapors into the air. And if you're using a resin 3D printer, there's usually even more exposure. Now, breathing those fumes once probably isn't going to send you to the hospital. That's not how this works. Think of it more like getting a tiny paper cut. One paper cut? No big deal. 1,000? Different story. Some experienced makers say they didn't notice anything for months. Then came the headaches, the irritated eyes, the sore throat after long printing sessions. Others discovered something even worse. Their bodies became sensitized. Here's what that means. At first, your immune system ignores the chemicals, but after enough exposure, it can suddenly decide, I hate this. From that point on, even a small amount of uncured resin can trigger skin rashes, breathing problems, or allergic reactions. And here's the frustrating part. Once your body becomes sensitized, there's no reset button. For some people, the reaction can last for years. That's why experienced hobbyists keep repeating the same advice. Wear nitrile gloves, ventilate the room, use a respirator rated for organic vapors when needed, and don't cure resin in the same room where you eat or sleep, because your garage workshop shouldn't smell like a chemistry lab. And if it does, your lungs are probably noticing before you are. There's something incredibly satisfying about making something with your own hands, turning a rough piece of wood into a beautiful table, shaping a block of stone into art, or pulling a perfect ceramic bowl from a pottery wheel. It feels creative, peaceful, almost therapeutic, until the dust shows up. Here's something most beginners don't realize. The dangerous dust isn't the dust you can see, it's the dust you can't. When you're sanding wood, cutting stone, or mixing dry clay, you're creating microscopic particles. Some are so small, they can travel all the way into the deepest parts of your lungs. And once they're there, your body has a hard time getting rid of them. Different materials bring different risks. Hardwoods have been linked to long-term respiratory problems. Stone carving can release silica dust, which has been associated with serious lung diseases after years of exposure. Even ceramics can become risky, especially when working with dry clay or certain glaze materials before they're fired. Notice a pattern? It's almost never the hobby itself. It's breathing the leftovers. Professional woodworkers know this. Walk into a serious workshop, and you'll probably see giant dust collectors, air filters, and someone wearing a respirator. Not because it looks cool, because after decades in the trade, they've learned the hard way that lungs don't grow back. One woodworker joked that sweeping the shop was the easiest part of the day. The hardest part was convincing beginners that the invisible dust was the real danger. Because if you can actually see the dust cloud, you've already breathed part of it in. Birds seem like one of the safest pets you could own. They don't need walks, they won't chew up your couch, and most of them fit comfortably on your shoulder. So, How did bird keeping end up on this list? The answer isn't the bird, it's what the bird leaves behind. Every day, birds produce tiny particles, feather dust, dried droppings, bits of dander. When they flap their wings, those particles don't just disappear, they float into the air. And if you're cleaning cages, changing bedding, or spending hours in a small bird room, you're breathing them too. Most people never notice a problem. But for some bird owners, years of repeated exposure can cause their immune system to overreact. Doctors call one form of this bird fancier's lung. It happens when the lungs become irritated by proteins found in feathers or droppings. At first, it can feel like a stubborn cold. A little cough, a little shortness of breath. Maybe you're just getting older. Maybe it's allergies, except it doesn't go away. Over time, that constant irritation can leave permanent damage if the exposure continues. The good news? This isn't something that happens overnight, and it doesn't happen to every bird owner. Good ventilation, regular cleaning, and avoiding heavy dust buildup can dramatically reduce the risk. One longtime bird owner joked that owning parrots means cleaning the house every single day, whether the house needs it or not. Honestly, the birds probably planned it that way. If you've ever seen a beautiful bonsai tree, you probably thought one thing. That's relaxing, and honestly, most of the time it is. Bonsai itself isn't dangerous. The risks come from everything around it. Many bonsai growers spend years trimming, wiring, repotting, and shaping their trees. That often means working with soil, fertilizers, pesticides, and sometimes fine dust from dried potting mixes. Here's something many beginners don't think about. Potting soil isn't sterile. It can contain naturally occurring fungi and bacteria. Most healthy people won't have any problems, but constantly breathing large amounts of dust while repotting, especially indoors, isn't a great habit. Some growers also use fungicides and insect sprays to protect valuable trees. Used correctly, they're helpful. Used carelessly, you're adding unnecessary chemicals to the air around you. The experienced bonsai community usually treats safety as just another gardening skill. Wear gloves when needed, work outside if possible. Avoid breathing dust when handling dry soil. Wash your hands before grabbing lunch. Simple habits, big difference. One bonsai enthusiast summed it up perfectly. The tree grows slowly, so should your mistakes. Honestly, that's probably good advice for every hobby on this list. Backyard chickens have exploded in popularity over the last few years. Fresh eggs, less food waste, and, somehow, a flock of tiny dinosaurs living in your backyard. Sounds pretty harmless. So why are chickens on this list? Because every time you step into a chicken coop, you're breathing in more than just fresh country air. Here's what most people don't realize. A chicken coop is full of microscopic particles, tiny bits of feathers, dried droppings, feed dust, and bacteria and fungi that naturally grow in warm, organic environments. Most of those particles are invisible, but every time the chickens flap their wings, or you clean the coop, they get launched straight into the air, and eventually into your lungs. Your lungs are designed to filter out small amounts of dust, but repeated exposure over months or years is a different story. Researchers have found that breathing organic dust from poultry environments can irritate the airways and trigger long-term inflammation. In some people, especially those with heavy or repeated exposure, the immune system can overreact to proteins from birds, leading to a condition known as bird fancier's lung, a type of hypersensitivity pneumonitis. It doesn't happen overnight. It usually starts with symptoms that seem harmless. A lingering cough, feeling unusually out of breath, getting tired more easily. The tricky part? Many people assume it's just allergies, or that they're simply getting older. Another issue is ammonia. As chicken droppings break down, they release ammonia gas. In small, well-ventilated spaces, it's usually not a big deal. But inside a poorly ventilated coop, that gas can build up. Even at relatively low levels, ammonia can irritate your eyes, nose, and lungs. Think of it as your body's way of saying, hey, maybe crack a window. The good news is that experienced chicken keepers already know the solution. Keep the coop dry, improve ventilation, wear a dust mask when cleaning, and avoid letting dust build up in the first place. Because the chickens probably won't complain about dirty air, but your lungs definitely will.